well, all plants, but especially trees being larger, release a chemical called phytoncides. And Ching Li, who is a leading expert in forest bathing kind of studies and science, found that his participants who spent 2 days in nature in a forest environment noticed that the natural killer cells in their body greatly increased. So natural killer cells are really important for our immune system. And they also noticed anti-cancer proteins too. There's lots of really cool science behind the forest bathing world, and yeah, I think it's just really important for everyone to experience and for their mental and physical health.
Sam from Fleeting Fern, welcome to the Unsustainable YouTube channel. It's so wonderful to have you on here speaking with us today, and in such a beautiful setting, no less. So I know that you're a woman of many talents and skills, but what we would love to speak to you about today is your role as a forest therapy practitioner. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming one?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So yes, we're here in Birkrag, which is an area in Harrogate, which is where I do some of my sessions. And yeah, my journey is a little bit different, I guess. I've always been interested in nature, very obsessed with David Attenborough from a very young age.
Me too.
But essentially, I trained as a counsellor and did psychology and did some counselling in local schools and things like that. But really found that a couple of years ago, I struggled with burnout myself. At the time, it was one of those things you didn't realise you were going through it. And then at that time, I just found myself craving more and more time in nature. Even if I'd go for a walk, which would normally scratch that itch, I found myself like needing more and wanting more. So through that, I kind of looked at mindfulness and went down kind of that rabbit hole. And then I kind of came back to thinking, actually, is there something more nature-based I could do specifically? And on my mini moon, actually, a couple of years ago, came across this book was on the table, Forest Bathing. It's kind of like all you need to know in a concise manual.
Amazing.
And I thought, actually, what is forest bathing? Like, what could I do with that? So so last year I started my training, and that was through a company called Lightbox down in Bristol. And then in June I qualified, and I just found actually it was brilliant for my brain to be awake again from all the new learning and basically find something that fits with my values and what I needed as well for my mental health. So yeah.
What was the training like? So I imagine it's not like a conventional process that you've ever been through before. Was there any sort of challenging or surprising experiences when you went through forest therapy training?
So it was actually it was an online training course. So we met every couple of weeks, and between then and there, we had to do some reading. We had some articles to read, the science behind forest bathing, which was really interesting. And then we had practical assignments set. So we had to go out and to our sit spots. We had to find somewhere in nature where we could connect with and go back and visit every time. So that was a different woodland actually from here. And that was quite challenging in a way that at first it felt a little bit odd. People walking past with their dogs and you're kind of sitting and observing. And I did occasionally get a few people going, "You all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, fine." And I guess fitting it around work as well. I was working at the same time. But then towards the end, we had like 9 pieces of assessments to do, which actually I really liked doing. Because again, my brain was alive and I was learning new things and processing things. And part of that actually was spending 5 hours in nature. No phone. You were encouraged to fast as well. So you weren't meant to snack or anything like that. No distractions, by yourself, continuous 5 hours. So, and not going for a walk. You had to kind of be in kind of like one spot of approximately no more than 2 miles kind of distance. So I actually came here. I went down, there's a beck down there called Oak Beck, and it was beautiful. It was really nice. And again, at first it felt a bit strange. A few emotions did come up, which was really nice and not uncommon in forest bathing. And then kind of relaxed into it, and there was this tree that kind of was doing this. It kind of fallen, and so I sat on this bit here, and it was just so comfortable. It was almost like the tree was like come and have a hug.
You were meant to find that spot,
Yeah,
and it was
absolutely.
made for you almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was quite funny. So a few dogs came along and was like sniffing me, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And I saw a woodpecker as well,
Yeah.
which was really amazing. So yeah, it was a really strange experience because it's not something we do naturally, but actually I got a lot out of it, and from that I felt really connected to this woodland. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. And just for the viewers, we actually did hear a woodpecker just before we started our
yeah.
conversation. So this setting is just so beautiful. And if you sit here long enough, then nature just tends to come to you.
Mm.
So for those that don't know, what exactly is forest bathing? Like, how does it differ from a usual hike or, yeah, a wander in nature?
It's something that kind of like originated in the 1980s in Japan. So it's shinrin-yoku, which is the Japanese term, which translates to forest bathing. And at that time, there was a big kind of push on getting back into nature and away from technology and the stresses of everyday life, really. So big companies kind of prescribed their employees to take time in nature. And what they found was people were off less with stress and illnesses, and productivity was higher, which obviously is very good for business. Um, so yeah, so there was a lot of science at that time. There was a lot of studies around why forest bathing is important. And essentially, what it is really slowing down and engaging with your five senses. So, your sense of touch, what you can see, what you can smell, what you can hear, and what you can taste as well. And actually, it's really important that we do that, because I think, don't quote me on this, but it might be, I think it's about 90% of our information is through our vision. And actually, we kind of neglect our other senses often. Um, so, it's really important just to kind of slow down and take that time. And a forest bathing session looks a lot different. So, for example, a what I call a classic forest bathing session starts with like a meditation. So, where I invite what I like to call my fleeting ferners, not clients
I
or
love
anything
that.
like that, to kind of just really disconnect from the outside world, whatever they've been doing that morning or whatever's going on in their head, and just to really like engage with their senses and awaken them. So the meditation goes through each of their senses in turn, just to kind of really awaken them. Things from inviting them to touch the soil and then bringing that up to the nose, things like that. And then from there are what are called invitations. So I like to explain it, they are very much like invitations. So, for example, if you came along and you were so involved in nature, you loved it, but you brought a friend along, which was like, oh, nature, that's really quite scary. That's absolutely fine. It's however the person wants to engage with the invitation, and there's no right or wrong. So, for example, it might be wander out from here and using your vision, notice the smallest details in this place. That's quite like a what I call it like a safe invitation, and it's quite a nice one to get started with, because you're then, instead of looking at the picture as a whole, you're really zoning into all the little details. So it might be so for us, in front of us, we've got these beautiful rocks with moss, and actually the details of every individual bit of the moss is so unique. So yeah, so depending on time, depends on how many invitations we kind of go through, and then after each invitation, there's an opportunity to share what you've noticed. And again, that is optional. So I have a pine cone that I bring around and pass around, and if you don't feel like you want to share, fine, you just pass that along. So it's really nice. It kind of gets people connecting not only to their environment, but to other people as well as themselves. And then at the end, we always end in tea and some sort of baked good, which is excellent.
Perfect way to round off a session, I
Mm.
imagine. So let's talk about the science behind forest
Mm.
bathing. So the physical and mental health benefits, because there are quite a few, aren't
Yeah.
there? Would you be able to talk us through what those might be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess one that I get most excited about is something called phytoncides. Trees, but well, all plants, but especially trees being larger, release a chemical called phytoncides. And Ching Li, who is a leading expert in forest bathing kind of studies and science, found that his participants who spent, I think it was 2 days in nature, in a forest environment, noticed that the natural killer cells in their body greatly increased.
Wow.
Yeah, so natural killer cells are really important for our immune system, and they also noticed anti-cancer proteins too.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So, and in that particular study, they found the effects of that lasted for up to 30 days. So it's not even just like a boost to your immune system there and then. It kind of like it lasts for quite a long
Mm,
time as well. And phytoncides as well has been proven to like reduce your cortisol levels, so your
mm,
stress levels. So that I think is one thing that I'm very excited about and like to
mm,
tell my Fleeting Ferners when they join.
mm.
Other things as well. Reduces blood pressure, blood rate, because you're just heart rate rather, not blood rate. As you're in this kind of environment and you're really slowing down and kind of trying to empty your mind.
Mm,
And there's also been other studies by Kaplan and Kaplan and the attention restoration theory.
mm,
So there needs to be certain qualities of a natural environment, but essentially being out in nature can improve your creativity, your attention, and just help you feel more cognitively refreshed as well. So that's really important, I think, combating things like burnout, for example,
mm.
and just like that busy mindset too. So yeah, so there's lots of really cool science behind the forest bathing world, and yeah, I think it's just really important for everyone to experience and for
Yeah.
their mental and physical health. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's incredible. I don't think many people realize actually the healing power of
Mm.
nature. We're certainly not exposed to nature enough in our
Mm.
modern lifestyle, for sure. And I was actually reading that we're living in a time where more people are experiencing this condition called subhealth,
Mm.
where we're suffering from inflammation, like stress,
Mm.
fatigue, poor sleep, low immunity, all from our modern lifestyle. And then at the same time, I shared this study with you recently that we're also living in a world where we're more disconnected from nature than
Mm.
we ever have been. And I think the study said that we've declined and our nature connection has declined by around 60%
Yeah.
since the 1800s, which is massive. I'm just wondering, do you think maybe these two things are connected? And why is it that we are, in your opinion,
Mm.
that we are so disconnected from nature now?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's it's quite complex, isn't it? I think that it's on lots of different levels. I think definitely we live in a world, don't we, where we almost live to work rather than work
Mm,
to live,
mm,
with the pressures from our employers or just the how we have data and alerts on our phones 24/7. You can access anything at any time, and that kind of blurs the line between kind of what we should be doing in terms of work
mm,
and socializing and things, and actually that free space to kind of explore things like nature
mm,
and things along those lines. But I think as well, people view nature as an it rather
mm,
than what it actually is, which is a living, breathing being and a connection of different things. So, in my forest bathing sessions, a few times, what I've done is I've used a ball of wool as like a bit of an icebreaker, a bit of an introduction.
cool.
And I get people to kind of say their name, perhaps something they're hoping for in the session, or if they've experienced forest bathing before. And it ends up that it looks like a bit of a web, and I kind of use that as a bit of a visual that just like in nature, everything is connected. And just like
Mm,
us as human beings, we're all connected. And that mycelium network underneath everything, that's kind of those messages between the trees
mm,
and the plants and the fungi and everything like that. Um, and actually, nature is so important and it is a living being. So I know in the UK at the moment, because of the climate and everything, we're experiencing signs of autumn earlier and the
mm,
leaves are going brown. Like on our way here,
mm.
I got very excited over a blackberry
Yes, yeah.
that was very ripe for the
Very
picking,
juicy.
very juicy. But I mean, it's not even the August bank holiday,
Too
so
early. Mm,
it's way too early. So yeah, you can definitely tell because of that climate that nature is struggling at the moment, and
mm,
that's because it is a being, it's not an it.
mm,
And I think we don't have quite a lot of people don't have that reciprocal relationship with nature, so they discard litter, or they quite sadly near us there was that big fire on our one of our national parks, and you know people just don't think of the consequences, and that actually nature is a being, which I think is probably one of the biggest barriers, I think, to why we feel so disconnected from nature.
I was reading that the naturalist Edward Wilson in the 1980s, he introduced something called the biophilia
Mm,
hypothesis, which is something I've been very interested
yeah.
in. And it suggests that humans have an innate need to connect with nature.
Mm,
It's the very essence of our humanity and what binds us to all living things. And I wondered
yeah.
what you thought about this theory, about this idea of us having this biological need to be in nature. It's almost part of our genetics. And do you see forest bathing as helping people tap into that innate
Yeah.
connection?
Yeah, absolutely, and that was part of my reading for my studies, was actually the biophilia hypothesis, and it was really interesting, and it kind of
Wow.
made sense, and I think you can kind of look at nature and see ourselves in nature as well. So, for example, if you look at like a tree that's been cut, often the patterns in there quite reminds of like our fingerprints, for example. So we can see parts of ourselves in nature, definitely. And I think forest bathing really does connect people back to that innate feeling of being in nature. So often my fleeting ferners kind of come back and think, oh, I've like tapped into my inner child again. So whether they're playing with the leaves or touching the moss or being really curious about what that mushroom is, um, that's really important. And things such as like the smell of rain and, yeah, there's just so many bits in nature, I think, that people start to begin to feel really comfortable in when they're given the time and the space and the headspace to kind of like slow down and connect with it again. Um, and quite a lot of time I see on social media a lot of things like cabins are popping up, and this idea of being unplugged and away from everything. So I do think there is slowly like this shift, whether that's a fashionable shift in a consumerism kind of way, I don't know, but you know forest bathing in its essence kind of gets people to really connect back with their roots, which is part of the meditation, actually, which is what I do is I kind of ask people to I invite people to imagine roots coming from their body and down into the earth, and kind of thinking about what was here before them and what beings have crossed this path before them. And actually, I think that really helps people to feel connected, and that's often something that they go away with reflecting, like, oh, I haven't done that in such a long time, or that felt really needed, and I felt like I've been given a hug by nature, just by coming out and experiencing it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me feel a bit sad actually
Mm,
that if you think about like when you're a child, like if you are fortunate enough to live close to nature and being that setting where you are outside, as a child, you are sort of in those natural environments a lot
mm,
more. You're very present. You're just so immersed in those experiences. You've got a lot more time to do that. But then as you get into being an adult and
mm,
you're forced to kind of spend more and more time inside because that's our modern life, isn't it? It's very insular. Then we kind of lose that. I
mm,
think a lot of us have lost that connection. And I certainly feel that. And
mm,
from personal experience, like I've been to your forest bathing sessions a couple of times now. And the only way that I can describe it is I sort of feel like I'm coming home to
mm.
myself. The first forest bathing session I went on with you, we were here, weren't we?
Yeah.
And I remember coming home and my partner just looked at me and he said, "You're actually glowing."
Oh.
And it was a rainy day, wasn't it,
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
did it?
yeah.
And which was something quite magical about it,
Mm,
really, hearing the water, the rain through the leaves, and I felt really well. And I was so
mm,
surprised. It was the first one I've been to, and I didn't know what to expect. Although I was really excited because I love spending time in nature, but I've never quite connected with nature
mm,
in that way when I've been on a hike. Like it's usually, we're engrossed in conversation or I'm thinking about something else. I'm not really actually properly
yeah.
absorbed in in the moment. So I do like recommend to all the viewers that are watching, I do recommend that if they do get a chance to go forest bathing, then they should,
Yeah.
because it, for me, it really was transformative. And now when I go out in nature, I'm way more inclined to focus on those smaller
Yeah.
details, whereas before I wouldn't have done. And I think your forest bathing sessions is something, it's a beautiful experience, and you really guide people through safely, um, and in such a calm and restorative and nourishing way. Is that the
Mm.
feedback that you get from your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Often when people come, they might come with friends, and as I kind of alluded to earlier, you often have them kind of sat like this, and you're like, ooh.
Mm,
And then as soon as the meditation kind of happens and you explain what forest bathing is, because I think a lot of people have misconceptions of what it is, you can just see them visibly kind of relaxing into themselves, which is
mm,
really lovely. And often, which when I started practicing, it was really interesting and not something I kind of expected. Often people get quite emotional in sessions. So whether that's they've seen something or they've had an experience. So, for example, one lady had a feather, or I think it was a leaf perhaps, land on her shoulder, and she kind of felt like that was her husband who had sadly passed away,
oh,
kind of being there and connecting with her. Um, and then I've had other people where they've just kind of not realized actually they've had a lot going on in their lives, and actually just taking that time to just relax and connect and just empty their brain,
mm,
almost like a meditation, really. Um, Kind of get emotional, and because they feel like actually I need to change something, I need to make a change in my life. So, and then you have people that come along and just, when I say just, it's still just as important and as powerful, but just have like a really nice time just connecting and just yeah, taking the pressures of everyday life off from them, and just kind of doing things and tapping into that inner child again as well. So yeah, I had some really lovely
mm.
bits of feedback, and almost everybody has gotten something from the sessions. I think actually everybody has, in some way.
I certainly
And
did. Mm,
yeah, so and I love it as well every time, just holding that space. Obviously, it's different being the facilitator, but actually, I get so much out of seeing how the progression and the change and the shift from people from when they start the session to when they finish the session as well.
mm.
So
You create this incredible space for people. I would really recommend forest bathing to anyone who's feeling
mm,
stressed, they're struggling with something, whether it's grief or any kind of pressure or pain. I would
mm,
I would recommend coming to forest bathing, because being in nature is just, I think we can get so much from nature. We've come from nature,
yeah,
and I think we've forgotten that. And I think that's part of our problem. It's we're not living that authentic life
mm,
close to the natural world like we should be.
yeah,
No wonder we've got a problem with stress and burnout, and people not quite feeling like they're living the life that they want to live,
mm,
because we're surrounded by so many artificial
yeah,
things like consumerism, like capitalist structures. It's not natural, it's very overwhelming, and now with the
yeah,
digital world with AI, it's too much.
yeah,
So
definitely.
I think what you're offering is, it's really valuable, and I think it's only going to become more
Mm,
beneficial. I think, as you say, I think there is a shift, and I think
yeah,
people are, myself included in that, I want to kind of move away from all of the technology, from
mm,
all of the modern systems, and have that simplicity. I mean, I don't think there's anything better than sitting in the woodland with a brew.
yeah.
I mean, we will have a
We
brew
will have a brew.
after this conversation, so I'm very excited about
Yeah.
that. What changes would you like to see then, that we've talked about,
Mm.
the condition of the modern lifestyle, the modern person? What changes would you like to see in how we live and connect with nature in the future?
Yeah. I think I think really working from schools, and when I was a counsellor in a primary school, I was quite shocked at, I'd often do play therapy and things. I was quite shocked at the children kind of looking at me for instruction, rather than just going ahead and doing it. So I think really to feel connected back in nature, it's just starting from the foundations of our kids and just allowing them to get dirty, to take risks, just enjoy themselves in nature, and instead of when they're, you know, stressed or whatever like that, just putting an iPad in front of them, actually just making sure they're getting
Yeah.
outside and getting that fresh air. Um, and again, all the way through schools, trying to encourage people to get outside, and young people, because I think being outdoors, being cold, being wet, and still being okay really can boost your resilience. Because if you can manage that, you
Yes.
can, replicate that in different parts of your life. And I think young people working again in schools have kind of seen they don't have that resilience, and perhaps being outdoors can help teach them that as well as new skills, navigation, things like that as well. Really important life skills, but also to be able to again get things wrong in a safe environment where they can then learn from that and actually have this invaluable skill. And then, yeah, I guess like us as adults, again, kind of reining in that expectation to be, available all the time.
Mm.
That guilt of I often read messages and then I unread them because I'm just like, actually, I don't have the capacity to reply to that now. I could, but then I'll know that they'll reply back straight away, and then
Yes.
we're back in that vicious circle. And actually, yeah, just having sort of that time, that those boundaries in place where actually that it's okay not to reply straight away. And the same with work as well, that home work life balance. It's, working from home is really tricky, to get out in
Yes.
nature, but I'm very lucky that I've just started a new job and my team actively go on walks on their lunch break, which is so lovely.
Wow.
And my new job obviously is going to be out in nature more, which is so important. But um, so yeah, so just trying to like shift things, I think, right down from childhood up to when we're in work, and just actually it being normal to go outside and,
Mm.
go and explore. So
Yeah, 'cause I think I read a
mm,
statistic recently that in Britain, anyway, I think on average people spend about 90% of the time indoors,
yeah,
which is insane. But then when I kind of look at, my day to day, that seems pretty accurate to me because
yeah,
I have to be inside for my job.
mm,
Um, and then I try and get outside as much as possible. In the summer, it's
yeah,
better because you've got longer days, but in the UK, it does get really dark in the winters, and then that
mm,
makes it's even harder to kind of
yeah,
get outside. And as you say, I think in normalizing it from a young age and
mm,
making sure that connection with nature isn't lost
yeah,
into adulthood, and nature is integrated in the workplace as
mm,
well. I mean, I think we're already seeing it in some countries. For example, Singapore is like a
mm,
classic example of like biophilic design. I
yeah,
think they have a hospital where they've
mm,
integrated biophilic design.
yeah. There has been
Yeah.
studies here in the UK actually where they've compared a group of like post-op patients and those with views of a brick wall, versus views of nature. I think it was a tree
Wow.
specifically.
Mm.
Actually, the people with nature views required less pain medication,
My gosh,
and
that's
actually their recovery
incredible.
rate was slightly quicker.
Mm.
So it really does show that actually, even if you're struggling to get outdoors all the time, but perhaps like positioning your desk, if you have working from home, to face your
Mm.
garden or to face outside,
Mm.
can also be beneficial. And I know studies as well, even like viewing images of nature and
Mm.
things
Mm.
can help with our emotional
Mm.
state too. Um, so yeah, definitely, it's really cool to hear that like buildings are being designed with that in mind.
For people who don't have easy access
Mm,
to nature, if they live in an urban environment, built up
yeah.
area, they can't easily get out in the forest. What are your tips for slowing down and finding those nature connections?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think so earlier this year I did like 28 days of nature, which was like a bit of a
Oh,
daily
beautiful.
challenge, yeah, of different things to do, that didn't necessarily involve like 2 hours or 3 hours in nature. But I think for those in the kind of urban environment, it's just recognizing that actually nature is all around us, whether it's a dandelion in the crack of a pavement or a tree next to a
Mm.
building, something like that. I know, for example, there's a tree around the corner from me that is positioned perfectly between two buildings. And since forest bathing, I've started to notice that more. And I notice
Oh,
the
wow.
change in the seasons and the branches, and when it gets its leaves, and then when it loses its leaves.
Wonderful.
So kind of connecting with what is around you, I think, is really important. things like I've mentioned, if you're working from home, trying to think about positioning your desk or something near natural light or a view of a garden or something like that. One thing I'm really keen on is I design and sell these brew with a view mugs, which
I
are really
love
cool.
them.
Obviously, I'm biased, but but the whole idea behind this is, whether you're going on a hike or whether you have 5 minutes in your garden, or perhaps in that urban environment, packing a flask, bringing your mug and just taking a few
Mm-mm.
minutes, actually sitting down and having your favorite hot drink is just as important. You're away from your screen, but particularly if you do have a view, there is science behind that as well. Whereas you're looking into the distance, you're triggering your parasympathetic nervous system too, because when we're stressed, we have like tunnel vision, don't we? We're kind of looking in the
Yes.
what's really close by, what's happening close by.
Survival.
Yeah, survival mode. Whereas if we're actually sitting down, we're taking in that view, then that's a bit of a mindful kind of experience. But also, you are using your senses, aren't you? The temperature of your drink in the mug, the
Mm,
smell of that, what you can see, what you can hear. So here we've got lots of birds tweeting away. We've got a few robins
we
up to
do.
their business. So something as simple as, going to your garden or your local park bench and just having a nice drink without your phone, just put your phone away, can be really beneficial. Noticing things like different colours. So I think as humans, we see the most colour and hues of green. So, again, just wandering around locally and um, noticing the different shades of green, the different textures, being curious as well, I think is quite a good thing.
Yes.
So, asking yourself questions like, why does that plant do that? What is that plant? And actually,
Mm,
not knowing the answers is okay. You
mm,
don't need to know what everything is or what everything does, but perhaps what it might do is it might get you thinking and kind of thinking about what it could be or why it is the way it is, which I think is really important as well. So, yeah.
there's some great tips. I'm very distracted by those squirrels. We've just got
Oh,
some
it's the
squirrels like
squirrels.
having a little bit of a moment over there.
I did wonder what that noise was.
Yeah. What's next for you on your own journey as a forest therapy practitioner and with Fleeting Fern?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm got a few. Autumn's my favourite season, definitely.
Same.
So I'm very excited about some events coming up. So I'm collaborating with Amy, and we're doing a autumn equinox kind of session. So it'd be forest bathing,
Amazing.
cacao, sound bath. And then in October, I've got like a creation forest bathing day. So forest bathing, and we're going to do some like arts and crafty bits as well, which would be really exciting. I'm also being invited to a local school for their inset day to do like a staff wellbeing event and things.
Amazing.
And hopefully with my new day job, I'm hoping to like combine the two things. And yeah, kind of I think next year will be a year to kind of reassess and try and like, I don't want to use the word push, but kind of like let it grow a little bit
Mm,
further. See what I really like doing. I also have my own sound bowls, so I'm gonna
that's
try give them a go and
amazing.
perhaps add that to my practice. So yeah, so I think it's some really exciting stuff. It's been an up and down year, so I'm really excited to kind of get back to the events. It's currently summertime, and I know lots of people are on holiday, so it's quite like a strange time. It's quite a quiet time, so I'm excited for the autumn to kick in and get back to the events and get connecting with people, getting them outside, and yeah, just doing what I love really.
That sounds wonderful. And where can people find out about your
Mm,
events and what's
yeah.
going on with Fleeting Fern?
So mainly through Instagram, so at fleeting_fern, and Facebook as well. And through both of those things, you can sign up to newsletter as well. So I have to say, it's only really when I remember to send a newsletter out. That's on my list of things to improve. But yeah, just kind of keep in touch that way. Really encourage people to kind of tag me in any nature snacks or fleeting moments, or some people have
Yes,
purchased the mug, so the brew with a view. I love to see all the views out there, and yeah, just kind of get the conversation going and getting people back out into nature and connecting with their inner child and just that inner peace, really. Yeah.
amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for taking the time to speak with us today. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I look forward to seeing Fleeting Fern growing in the next year, and I look forward to coming to some of your events too.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.